Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for an introduction to Vision Asset Management. In every professional services firm, our people are our greatest asset. But in a close second are all of our fixed assets that make it possible for us to deliver successful projects. These are things like computers, office equipment, survey equipment, company vehicles, and so much more. Asset Management is a new module for Vision users that's available with Vision 7.5. Vision 7.5 is currently available for our customers that are hosting their own instance of Vision in-house. For our Vision users in the cloud, Vision 7.5 will be available in late March or early April, depending on your upgrade window. So how can you leverage Deltek Vision Asset Management to help you take control of your assets? Today, we're going to share the top 5 reasons your firm needs asset management. But before we dig into the content, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover. To ensure the highest quality recording, we have muted all attendees. If you have a question, just type it into the question and area portion of your screen at any time. We will answer these questions as we have time at the end of the webinar. If we run out of time, we will follow up with you individually to make sure that all of your questions get answered. Also, please remember to take a few minutes to fill out the short survey at the end of this webinar. As we go through the presentation today, you do have the ability to make your screen larger by dragging the bottom corner of the viewing area, and this will help you to be able to see the demo portion a little better. Also, this session is being recorded, and as a participant, you will receive a link to the presentation, the recorded version, as well as the presentation itself, so you don't need to feverishly write down every detail that we go through today. My name is Megan Miller, and I'm in the product marketing team for Deltek Vision. Prior to joining Deltek, I served as a marketing coordinator for a professional services firm for more than 10 years. I'm joined today by Ed Zanatti, the product manager for asset management. Ed, could you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, Megan. And good afternoon, everyone. There's probably a good chance that I've worked with a lot of you over the many years that I've been with Deltek. I was in the consulting group for a good 10, 11 years prior to coming over to the product group over the past 3 years. And what's been very rewarding for me is taking a lot of the feedback, and let's face it, you guys are fantastic clients and you're not shy, and you tell me what you need in the product. And I had a lot of feedback about how to best manage fixed assets. And so really over the past year, I've reached out to many of you to get your feedback on exactly what you need for an asset management product. And we're really excited to be able to demo that for you here today.
Great, thanks, Ed. So let me start by asking you a question. When you go to purchase a new asset, you spend a significant amount of time making sure that you have all the right specifications and that it will meet your needs for years to come. But once you purchase the asset, do you manage your asset with the same precision that you manage your projects and your people? Chances are the answer is no. But during today's webinar, we're going to walk through these questions that you see here about asset management and answer any other questions that you might have. So let's dive right in. First, do you know where your assets are? Up to 15% of fixed assets are ghost assets, or assets that are lost, stolen, or unusable. And thousands of hours are spent every year searching for missing or misplaced assets. When it comes to delivering your project on time and within budget, you need to not only have the right people assigned to the project, but you need to have the right assets available to meet the deadline. If your project requires a survey, does your survey crew have the survey van and the equipment they need so that they can complete their tasks? Do they know where to find it when they need them the most? Are they still performing as needed, or is there a piece of that equipment that needs to be repaired? Waiting until the project starts to look for those needed assets can cause significant project delays and jeopardize your deliverables. With Vision Asset Management, you will know where your assets are when you need them the most so that you can quickly and easily track which assets are active and which ones are no longer in service. Ed's going to show you how you can leverage the new power of Vision's Asset Management module to help you know who has your specific assets. Ed?
Thank you, Megan. So I want to take a step back, and before we jump into the asset management module, I want to talk about a proper way to set up so that we can tag our assets to easily find them when we need them, as Megan was saying. And so what we've done is we're integrated with the optional purchasing module to utilize what we call item categories. And so this gives us the ability to go down a couple layers in categorizing our capital items. And so you can see here in what I'm showing you on the screen, I've set up 7 or 8 categories for automobile, computer systems, furniture and fixture, maybe survey equipment as a category. Then I can come into the item master and add in specific asset items that I want to track. And again, this can be a level up from the actual item that you purchase. I want you to think of it almost as your catalog. And this catalog can be as high level or low level as you want to set that up. Okay? Once we have this set up and we go in and we add a new asset in the assets home, the equipment info center, again, this is also shared by purchasing. I can come in and assign this particular asset to the item that I've created from my catalog. Now I own this asset, and maybe I want to put some additional information that's very specific to this asset, like the model number and the serial number. And because the Equipment Info Center is a full info center, you can add as many user-defined fields and tabs and grids and anything that you need to add to track for this piece of equipment or this asset item, you can definitely put in there in addition to what we've already put in. As you can see on the General tab, we've got all this information here. And what's key is that this asset item belongs to a project. And the project is where, if you're using organization within your Vision setup, it's going to tie to the org based on the project that it's assigned to. Okay. Now, once I get the asset into the system, and we'll go through that in more detail in a minute about how to integrate that and make that very, very easy, we can assign the asset to an employee. And it's just as simple as coming in and clicking on the Associate button, and it's going to give me an employee lookup to add in additional employees. Now, one of the things that in our early adopter program that some good feedback there is because I can associate a terminated employee, maybe I add in things like location is part of that. It's not going to go against your employee license. So here I set up a server room, and I'm going to select that and assign that. Not that we would have a Ferrari in the server room, but you see what I'm doing here. And so you have a lot of flexibility in how you set this up. Let's go ahead and remove this. Okay, now that I've assigned this to an individual, I can actually go into the Employee Info Center and for a given employee, see all of the assets that are set up for that employee. And we'll pick up Tom, go to the Assets tab, and you can see here that I've assigned these 2 assets to Tom. It could be laptops, could be cell phones, it could be any type of asset that is in the possession of Tom. I can now associate that to that individual. Okay. Lookups. Let's talk a little bit about the lookup. I want to be able to get to my assets very quickly. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to have 2 hotkeys. one for active assets and one for inactive assets. Inactive is typically used when either the asset's created from an AP voucher or purchasing, and I need to go in and set that up. It's inactive. And then I can activate it. Now, I could put something in the system, set it as inactive, saying I don't want to depreciate against it, but assign it to somebody. And I can do that here. I can also do some save searches. Here I want to see all the available computers that I have, and click search. And now I have just created this hot search to find everything that's available for me to assign. Let's close out of that. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the dashboard here, and I've set up some reports that I can run very quickly to see different asset assignments. And so this particular report is set up to show me assets assigned, and I'm sorting this by the category description that I set up early on that I showed you. I can also come in and say, let's run a report by the actual location. So this one's in the Boston office, this is in the Chicago office, and then the asset that's set up. Okay. One other thing that's kind of interesting is because we've assigned the asset items to a project, I can actually come into Project Review and pull up that particular overhead project. So let's pull in General Office, Overhead. And I'm going to click on the Equipment tab, and now you can see here are all of the assets assigned to this profit center, and I can drill that down into whatever WBS structure that I've set up. So just another way to go in and see the assets assigned. So in summary, we've really worked hard to make sure that locating your assets is very easy. Megan?
Great, thanks, Ed. So now you can see how you can not only know where your assets are, but assign your assets to specific people and look up locations and the status of those assets, particularly if there's multiples, as if the case of the computers that Ed showed. But how accurate are those fixed asset records? It's estimated that 65% of fixed asset data is either incomplete, inaccurate, or just missing altogether. Firms spend a significant amount of time and due diligence during the purchasing process, but fail to accurately track and maintain their asset records. 30% of firms don't even know what they own, where they are, or who's using them. And this is often due to not tracking the transfers or not assigning assets to a particular person, as Ed just showed a few minutes ago. It's also important to track maintenance records and accurate depreciation records. With Vision's asset management, your firm can monitor maintenance records so you know if your asset is nearing the end of its useful life or if it's not available to use at all. You will have a complete picture of all of your assets, and you can compare and contrast your assets based on actual data. Ed's going to show how you can accurately maintain your asset records with Vision Asset Management.
Okay, thank you, Megan. So what I want to do is, now that I've shown you the assets home, which is in the Info Center under Equipment, I now want to move to the asset management application itself. And I'm going to come down here to what's called Asset Review. I'll click on that. And let's pull up a particular asset. I want asset from purchase or asset 64. And you can see here we have 4 tabs. First is the Settings tab that is going to show me how I've classified this asset by type, property type, and the depreciation method used against the various books. I can also go on the Summary tab and see all the financial information for this particular asset, again, comparing by book. And the goal here for making sure that that we set this up properly and make sure that our asset records are accurate is to make sure that we have the proper cost allocation. And so if I click here in the History tab, I can see every transaction against this particular asset. So you can see here I've had some depreciation processing against the Chicago office over the last 3 months. Now, I may get into a situation where I've got a person, they've been assigned this laptop, and they're now going to move to the Boston office. So I need to transfer this particular asset to the Boston office. Well, this is relatively easy. I'm going to click on the Transfer Split Processing. I want to pick my asset again. Okay. And then I have an action here. I either want to transfer it or I want to split it. So for this, I want to transfer. I'm going to pick my transfer date, and we're going to go backdate this. Okay, and so this is where it's existing assigned to Chicago. So anytime I run depreciation, the accumulated depreciation is going to update against Chicago, and the depreciation expense is going to go against Chicago. Well, I need to transfer the asset balance and the accumulated depreciation for this that's currently on the balance sheet against Chicago, and I need to move that, let's say, to Boston. And all future depreciation expense needs to go to Boston. So let's come in, and under Transfer To, I'm going to click Insert, and I want to find the project associated with Boston. And I've got this broken up by phase. So there's Boston. And so I am now going to transfer this laptop from the Chicago office to the Boston office. So I'm going to click Run. And I'm going to say, yes, I do want to proceed. And so the transfer's taken place. And so you can see here there's a posting sequence because it's actually done the journal entry. I'm going to say OK, click on OK. So let's actually go look at that. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to look at my posting logs. I want to change this to journal entries. And let's find the one that I just did. And it's done too. Pull up this one. And here's the one for the GL book. And because I had additional books, it created another posting log for the additional books. Because we're maintaining balances in the general ledger book, which is required, and any additional book that you set up, I need to maintain that as well. And so any transfers need to occur in both sets of books. And so you can see here, here's where I've moved all of the balances from the Chicago office to the Boston office. Okay, so let's go back to Asset Review. And let's pull up that same asset and go to the History tab. And now you'll see where I've booked the transfer. Now, I can also do disposal processing and split processing just like transfer. With disposal, you pick the asset that you want to dispose of. So let's pick an asset. And there's two types, scrapped or sold. Scrapped is going to create a journal entry to move the balances and pull it off of the balance sheet. And if there's any gain or loss, it will calculate that as well. And so you basically pick the asset and hit Run. It is period specific, so everything that I'm doing is in the accounting period of November 30th, 2015. And so this very easily allows me to make sure that all of my assets are being depreciated in the proper portion or setup of my organization. Megan?
Great, thanks, Ed. So now that you know where your assets are and you have an accurate record for each asset, you can now determine if your assets are performing as expected and if they're delivering the maximum return on investment. Do you have assets that are directly generating revenue? Are you putting too much strain on one asset while other similar assets sit in storage? Do you need more of the same kind of asset to relieve the burden or to meet project deadlines? Do you have maintenance plans in place so that you can proactively protect those investments? With asset management, you can dig into the details and review your asset records so that you know how many of a particular asset you have. Do you have 3 sets of survey equipment and you're only using 1, or you only have 1 when in fact you need 3? You can also better understand the financial return on your assets. You can get the better understanding of the financial return on your assets, what they're providing. So Ed, for this particular section, what are you going to show us to make sure that we are getting the maximum return on our investments?
Well, thank you, Megan. I want to start with talking about something that everybody has access to now, which is called units. And you get to that through Info Center and then units. And a unit, I get asked this all the time, Ed, what is a unit? Well, a unit is a cost that you want to allocate to a project, but you don't actually have a voucher for that specific amount of cost that you're going to allocate to the project. An example would be, let's say I buy some survey equipment. We'll just say we're going to buy a total station, and it's now an asset. But now I want to allocate that to a project. And there's 2 pieces of that that can be allocated through the unit. The first being the billing value for that particular item. And so here we're going to charge $500 for this total station. Let's say this is going to be on a daily basis. And then I say, okay, what's the cost to the project? So let's say the billing value is $500. The cost to the project is $250. So I'm going to debit the project $250. I'm going to credit a recovery account for $250 every time I post a unit here. And so this is really a great way to allocate this cost to the project and make it billable. Now with Vision Asset Management, we've taken this a step further. So let's say that I come in and I have a fleet automobile. And I'm going to pull up that auto. And I want to click on the GL Book tab, and I want to assign this automobile, this asset, to a unit. Okay, and what this is going to allow me to do is every time that I create billing value from units applied to a project, it's going to show it against that asset item. So let's take a look. I'm going to come back down here to the Asset Management application, and let's go into Asset Review. Let's pull up that automobile. I'm going to click on the Unit tab, and I can see this either current period, current fiscal year, or asset to date. I'm going to choose asset to date, and I'm going to refresh. And I can see now any time that I have applied a unit with this association to the asset. And so in this case, there was a quantity of 3, and so asset to date, it's generated $1,200 in potential billing value. So in summary, you can just see how quickly you can look and pull up an asset and say, is it financially performing for me over the life, over a year, or over a particular month? Back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Ed. So few firms have the data needed to make informed decisions about acquiring new assets or replacing aging assets. And even fewer have a plan in place to replace those aging assets. This results in significant unexpected expenses and oftentimes having too many of a particular asset. So how can you make more informed decisions about your asset management and your asset investments? When do you need to continue to invest in maintaining, for example, an existing company vehicle versus when is it time to purchase a new vehicle? How do you plan for that purchase, and what kind of budget do you need for your new assets as we move into the new year? Vision Asset Management can help. This module is seamlessly integrated with the Vision Purchasing module and the Accounting module. You don't have to have the Purchasing module to use Asset Management, But the integration makes it easier than ever to move your assets from acquisition to tracking and maintenance through depreciation and disposal all in one place. And Ed's going to walk us through some of that integration now. Ed?
Thank you, Megan. So I'm going to start with the optional purchasing application. And so in this case, I just want to set up this purchase order here. I've added a line item for a heavy-duty truck, and I have set the default distribution to say, okay, this is a general overhead item. And the line item, because of the item that I've set up, is saying that this is a capital item. Okay. So now I'm ready to submit this, and with Vision Purchasing, with the release of 7.4, we introduced a very powerful approval engine, and this approval engine is based on workflow that you set up. It's multi-stepped, multi-conditional, that you can go through and set the approval process however you would like. We also have that in version 7.5 for the AP vouchers. But for getting through and explaining asset management today, I've turned that off, and I'm just going to submit this purchase order. And so that means it's now approved because I don't have that turned on. And so when I come in here and I want to print this purchase order final, and I hit run, when I hit print, behind the scenes, it's has workflow to say, this is a capital item, create the capital item in the Equipment Info Center. So you can see here for purchase order 90, I have my heavy duty truck, and it's now that purchase order is now committed. So let's go and look under the Info Center equipment, and let's look up trucks. And there's my heavy-duty truck that's set up. And then I can come in here and finish the setup by assigning the asset type, the property type, making the asset active, setting the in-service date and the acquisition date. But it's in here now. And so I can easily get to this. So kind of best practice here is before you run depreciation in a month is do a search and say, give me all of my inactive assets that I need to go set up. Okay, so that shows you how from the purchasing it's going to set up the asset item for you in the Equipment Info Center. Now I can also do this using an AP voucher. So I want to come over here to the Transaction Center, Transaction Entry, and I want to pick AP Vouchers, and let's do a new one. And there, you'll see this new checkbox that says Allow Asset Entry. So I want to check that. And let's do this as of November 30th in US dollars and say OK. And what you're going to see on the screen here is some new columns in the AP voucher entry. So the first column, create an asset. So here I can come in and say, this particular row for this AP voucher, I want to create an asset. So I'm going to pick Billy Bob's Used Auto as the vendor, and let's pick a date and a bank. This is going to do this in US dollar, and put in an invoice number and a voucher date. And so I want to pick the type here. So let's say we need a truck. Let's do a light purpose truck. And I'm going to pick a light duty truck for my item number. Give it a description. And I need to assign it to now a project, and it needs to be an overhead project because it's a capital item. And let's put this to Chicago. It brought in my account number, and so let's say for this light-duty truck, it's going to be $35,000. Okay, so now that row is set up. Now, if I don't check this box, I can add in additional AP voucher cost to an existing asset that's already set up. And this is really useful to say that I buy a big server, and it's also going to come with some installation that I'm going to be able to depreciate as part of that. I can add all of that into that one record. And so in that case, I just would click the look up here and add that record. Okay, so now I've got in here my item. I want to save this. And let's go back and post it. And yes, I want to post. And I want to continue. Yes. I don't need the posting log. And so now that's posted. So let's go and find my truck in the info center. And here's the truck that I added. So you can see that I can very easily save a lot of time and effort in trying to figure out what have I bought that's capitalized, and instead of putting it on a spreadsheet and trying to figure out how you're going to depreciate it, it's all integrated. Whether you come from purchasing or an AP voucher, you can really integrate that with this and hopefully reduce a lot of mistakes. Megan?
Thanks, Ed. So now you can see how you can make informed decisions about whether you need to purchase a new asset or replace an existing asset. But how much are your assets really worth? Did you know that firms pay up to 30% on taxes and insurance for ghost assets? And again, these are those assets that are lost, stolen, or unusable. And one small error in the depreciation calculation spreadsheet can cost your firm thousands of dollars. Is your firm tracking accurate depreciation? Are you paying too much for your insurance and taxes? And ultimately, are your inaccurate records eating away at your bottom line? Ed's going to show how asset management can help you know which assets you need to keep and know what they're really worth. Ed?
Thank you, Megan. So again, I need to take a step back, and I want to move into and review the asset management configuration. Okay, and to start off, you may want to track additional books other than the GL book. And the GL book is always going to tie to your ledger. Okay, but there may be additional books, and in the case here, I've set up two tax books. A federal tax book and an AMT tax book to track things a little bit differently than I would track it for the general ledger. And you can have multiple additional books, as many as you need. Okay, and probably the second biggest thing as far as asset management is the depreciation methods. So we give you a default straight line method, and you assign the useful life in years and the recovery years in the default asset type or in the asset itself, or you can set up as many user-defined depreciation methods as you need. And so let me just show you an example here. So I've set up this sum of your digits. Its useful life and recovery years are both 3 years, because what I'm saying is that the percentage is going to be consistent. So let's say that I buy this in, let's say, December 1st. So it's going to go 12 periods at 50% of the value for those 12 periods. Okay, so I start December 1st of 2015 through November 30th of 2016, and we're going to depreciate 50% of that asset's depreciation basis. Okay. The second year, I'm going to go another 12 months at 33%, and then the last year, which would be 12 periods, the remainder, which would be 16%. So you can see with this tool, I can set up any method that I need. Now let's say that you need partial years. I can come in and say, I want to set this up over 18 months. So I'm going to tell it 2 years, 3 recovery years, and then the last year I'm going to say the value is 0. And so in essence what I've got is 12 plus 6 is 18 months to recover 100%. Here I've got a maker's 3-year, half-year convention that's coming right out of the IRS tables. And so what I'm saying in this case is I'm starting mid-year, and I'm going to go for the first part for 6 months at 33%, so it's coming right out of the IRS table. The next 12 months, 44%. Another 12 months at 14.8%, and then the last 6 months at 7.4%. Okay, so you can see this is really flexible in the way you set up the methods that you want to use. You can also come in and set up property type, improvement type. So let's say that I purchase an asset and I want to improve that asset. I can either, if I'm going to approve it pretty much at the same time I'm got another asset, and maybe I want to combine those, I can do it that way. Or it may be, let's say, a year down the road and I want to improve that asset, and I want to track that separately, but I want to show the association between the two. I can do that through the improvements. Section 179, you can put these values in for each of the tax years. And so if your fiscal year is a little different than your tax year, you can define that here. And then lastly is your asset types. And you can set up all of the asset types. And this is going to bring in, so when you set up a new asset and you select the asset type, everything's filled out for you. So the asset account, accumulated depreciation account, depreciation expense account. Again, we want to make this super easy. So once this is set up, you assign the asset type and you're off and running. So that pretty much covers the configuration. So let's jump back into and look at a particular asset. So let's start with this light duty truck that we've created here. And I want to look at the GL cost tab. And this is where you can see that this came in from an AP voucher. And I could have added other AP vouchers associated with this if I need to. This is going to give me my total acquisition cost, which will flow through to my additional books. Also, I can set less salvage value to come up with my GL book depreciation basis. Okay, so let's go to the GL book tab. In here, because I created this from an AP voucher and I'd already assigned an asset type from the AP voucher, all of this information is pulled in. But let's say that I need to update the acquisition date and the in-service date. Again, this in-service date, this is what's going to pick up when you run depreciation. It's going to look at this in-service date to say, okay, now it's in service, start running it, as opposed to when you acquire it. Because I've got straight line, I can modify the useful life in years. I can change the accumulated depreciation or depreciation expense accounts. If I have a lease, I can come in here and set the lease start and end date and the leasing vendor. We already talked about the unit association where I can create that here. Let's also come in here and talk about the additional books. We can change this to change the method or the useful life. We can change and add in less additional first-year depreciation. And yes, if I've already used up and try to apply that here, it's going to warn me, or it's not going to let you go past this. Since you've already applied your allowance for this year, you won't be able to put anything more. And that's in the Section 179 deduction. And if you have any bonus depreciation, you can pull that out of the basis as well. Okay, so now I come in and I've got everything set up. All I need to do now is come in and set this record as active. And now when I run depreciation, it's going to pull that up. Okay, so now let's talk about depreciation processing. So I'm going to come back to the asset management application. Let's go to depreciation processing. and I am going to pick and start with the general ledger book. So when I run depreciation, I can either run the GL book or the additional books. And this gives me the ability to, let's say that I want to run my tax books maybe outside of closing out the GL books. It'll allow me to break that and run it two different ways. So I'm in November. I haven't run my depreciation for November yet, so I want to go ahead and post it as I depreciate it. Let's pick a transaction date, November 30th, and then so I want to do all my assets that I have, and so I'm going to click Run. And it's going to warn me, you're about to run depreciation processing. Are you sure you want to do this? I am totally sure I want to do it. And I'm going to say yes. And so I'm done. So I've run depreciation for the months. And guys, I used to do this before as a director of finance for an engineering firm, and it was never in, what's that, 0.865 seconds, and I'm done. I know it's only 34 records, but it's pretty quick. And so again, we could go in here and do the same thing for the additional books. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll click yes to both of the dialogues. Okay, that's run. And so let's come back in here to Asset Review, and we'll now see that we have period depreciation in the month of November. Okay. I want to show you one other thing is the Section 179 review. We kind of talked about that a little bit. I want to pick the 2015 tax year, and you can see the assets that I've applied against my Section 179 deduction. And so I've already got 10,100 applied there. And with that, just kind of to summarize here, you know, in order to keep your records up to date in an easy way, so that you can, you know, quickly access your assets to know what they're really worth, your accounting team needs a tool that can really help you manage that. And we hope that Vision Asset Management will really help bring that about. Megan?
Thanks, Ed. As you can see with Vision Asset Management, with the Vision Asset Management module, you will know where your assets are. You'll have complete and accurate records for each asset so that you can ensure that you're getting the maximum ROI from your investments. This will allow you to make more informed buying decisions about fixed assets, and you'll know the true value of your assets all in one central integrated resource that your team is already using. If you haven't done so already, please start to submit your questions. I know we have quite a few, so I want to make sure that we spend some time answering some of these questions. Before we dig into that, here are a few key ways that you can learn more about the new asset management module. You can get more details about this module on our website by going to the first link that is shown here. You can also go to the Vision blog for more details. There is a blog in the 7.5 series specifically about asset management. And while you're there, you can sign up to follow the blog so that you can get great information from our product management team and the latest Vision news from that team as well as other Deltek experts. If you're interested in the asset management module for your firm, I encourage you to reach out to your account manager or a Vision partner for more details. There are several promotions that are in place at this point, and so this would be a great time to be able to reach out to them. I know several of you had questions about pricing that are coming in, and so what I will say is that that pricing depends on a lot of different variables, and so it's best for you to reach out to your account managers or to reach out to your partners to get those pricing questions answered so that we can make sure that you are getting the right answers to those questions. Also, to help implement asset management, the Deltek Global Consulting team is finalizing some packages that vary based on the complexity and your specific firm's requirements. Your account managers can also help get you the information about these packages when they become available. One last thing, make sure that you mark your calendar for February 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You will start to see some communication about this shortly, but this is our Have You Seen Vision Lately webinar, and during this event we will highlight some of the other great new features in Vision 7.5. We'll take a look at some of the new features in some of the recent releases, as well as take a look at what's on the horizon for Vision in the near future. As you go through this information and as you review this session after today's live event, you may have more questions, and so I encourage you to reach out to me. You can see my contact information here on the screen. Reach out to me and we'll make sure that we get those questions answered for you so that you have all of the information that you need to make an informed decision about whether or not this new module is the right answer for your particular firm. So with that, we will get to the questions, and Ed, let me dig into some of these questions here and see how you can help answer some of these. The first question we have is, yep, go ahead.
Megan, I've been scrolling through these, and I think some of them are kind of some common questions, so if I could, I'd like to just kind of hit the high-level ones as I speed read through the 95 questions, and really appreciate the questions. So, first, does it handle tax depreciation? I think that was some early questions, and so hopefully you saw by setting up the additional books that so the answer is yes. So you can have as many unlimited additional books as you need for tax depreciation. I saw several questions in here about import and export. So let me talk about the import for just a second. Import, what it allows you to do, the answer is yes. And so the import, you would import your existing assets into the Equipment Info Center. Then you would import in the accumulated depreciation and your acquisition cost. And so it's a two-step process to create the asset in the system and then bring in the values so that when you're pulling from an existing system, and it could be a spreadsheet, right, that you can quickly import all of this information in and go from there. So definitely from an import perspective, yes. From an export perspective, you can definitely, because a lot of the folks that I interviewed, they'll take that information and for our tax purposes, they want to export it to be put into your accountant's file. And so there is an export feature. There is reporting. I saw several questions about that. And the reports are kind of in two flavors, a summary and a detail. So a detail is going to give you everything about that asset on a page. And you can expand that in 4 sections. So there may be certain areas that you want. Let's say you want just the history for that particular asset. You can add that. Or everything. The other flavor is the summary report, and that's really a good report to do things like, grouping, what's my accumulated depreciation for this year, or depreciation expense for this year by my org, and so you can definitely set up all those reports as well. Let's see. There was a couple of questions early on about, do you have to own purchasing? And you do not. The purchasing module is optional. And what I was showing you early on with the purchasing setup is both asset management and purchasing, both modules, both independent, use the same item and category master. Okay, and think of it as the catalog. And so I don't want 2 separate catalogs. They both pull from the same catalog. And likewise, they both utilize the Equipment Info Center to track whether, from a purchasing perspective, you might be buying items for a project and you want that to sit on that project, and you can definitely do that in purchasing. Very similar to that with asset management, you're going to buying assets that are going to sit on your overhead project. So you can see the similarities there. Let's see if I can find some other common ones. There were several questions about cost, and Megan, do you want to address what's the best way for them for their specific firm to get the cost of the module?
Yeah, so this is several questions about whether or not this is included. So just to clarify, you do have to have 7.5 to be able to have access to this, but this is a separate module that will need to be purchased. So the best way to find out the information about that is to reach out to your account manager or to your Deltek partner if you're working with a partner to be able to get that information. If you have questions about who that is, reach out to the person within your firm that is your primary support contact, and they should be able to, they'll be able to get you in touch with your account manager, or you can always reach and to pass that information along with you. We'll also have some people that will be following up with you after this webinar to see if you have any additional questions that maybe we didn't get answered, and so they can definitely get you in touch with the right people as well.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. I see some other questions about, tracking leases, either capital lease or operating lease, and you can put something that you're not going to depreciate in the Equipment Info Center. And so let's say it is an operating lease and you don't want to depreciate that lease, but you want to put it in there, you're just going to say, hey, it's an active, don't depreciate it. Likewise, because the accounting process is very similar for prepaid, when I add something, I can say instead of to depreciate that, I want it to be a prepaid. Let's say it's general liability insurance. And so I buy this policy and I want to track it. There's information that I need to track about it. I can put that in there. Instead of clicking on depreciate, I'm going to click on prepaid, and I'm going to tell it how do I want it to amortize that general liability policy, and say it's over a year, and so I'll spread that payment over a year. And so because it was so similar, we added that feature in there, so that was a very good question. Let me go back through here and see what else I can quickly. Does the asset have to have a project? Yes. So that's, and the reason that it has to have the project is it's especially if you're using organization or maintaining separate balance sheets, that's where it knows where to assign that asset value to your ledger. Because think of Vision Asset Management as your subledger, and then we want that to be tied and no tolerance, right, between that and your general ledger. And so that gives us that ability. Now let's say that you don't maintain separate balance sheets and you don't have org turned on. Then in configuration, you're going to just set a default project, and then every time you create an asset from the AP voucher, it's going to default that project in, and you're off and running. So if that's your situation, we've thought of that as well. That was a good question. Let's see what else.
There was another question in there, Ed, about availability. And so just to remind you guys, we did cover that at the beginning, but some of you may have joined a little bit late. So Vision 7.5 that you have to have for this module is available now for our on-premise users, or those of you that are hosting your own version of Vision in-house. If you are in the cloud, Vision 7.5 will be available for you in mid-March or early April, depending on your upgrade timing, and you'll start to see information about your specific upgrade windows shortly after the first of the year. So if you have your own instance of Vision in-house, it's available now. Those that are upgrading in the cloud, you'll start to see information about your upgrade windows shortly so that you can get access to the asset management module.
Okay, great. I saw a question about security. So let's say that I don't want every AP representative to have access to enter in assets through an AP voucher. That is a security setting that you would go in, and it says allow this role to have access to add through the AP voucher, or you could turn that off altogether. So saw a couple questions about that. So you can definitely limit who has rights to access that. Another question that we typically get is, from a licensing perspective, what are you licensing? And if your security allows people to see, information, let's say in the Equipment Info Center or through AP Voucher, that's not what you're licensing. You're licensing the asset management application itself. So for people to see what assets they have assigned to them, that's not part of the licensing model. So that's a good thing. Let's see, what would you use Split for? It's a good question. Let's say that best practices is, let's say when you create an AP voucher or you create a purchase order, is each line item is a specific asset item. But let's say you didn't do that. Let's say that your AP voucher was 10 laptops, okay? And so you've put that in there as 10 laptops. But then you go in here and your IT department says, hey, this is kind of really neat stuff. Let's start assigning the laptops to the individuals. So let's create the asset item for all 10. And so I want to then split, let's see, 9/10 of that to each other of the 9 assets that I created. And so that would do the journal entry. So let's say that I'm 6 months down the road, it's going to do the journal entry to apply 9/10 of that value off of the one record that had all 10 and create 10 separate records, and it'll do all that for you as part of the split processing. That was a good question. You see, so back on the depreciation methods, I see a couple questions. What methods are available? So the default out of the box is the straight line method, but you can add as many user-defined methods as you need. Okay, so if you can think of it, if you can find it in the IRS tax book or whatever, you can definitely do that. Now the other thing is, Vision users are not restricted to any one country. And so we've really tried hard to make sure that asset management can work in any country. And so we've given you the foundation to, whether you're in Europe or Canada or the United States, to put the assets in the system, build in the appropriate depreciation methods that you need, and you're off and running. So, and then if there's any country-specific questions, I'll make sure to get back with you on any of those, because I see a couple of those in here as well. So, Megan, I think that takes us almost up to the top of the hour.
Yep, we're getting close to the end, and I know there's still some questions. So just as a reminder, if we did not get to your question, we will follow up with you individually to make sure that you get your questions answered. Just as a reminder, a couple of these places that you can go to learn more. And if you have questions after this, and you go back and you're talking to other members of your teams and there are additional questions that you want to get answered, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I will work with Ed to make sure that we get all of those questions answered, whether that's today, tomorrow, next week, next month. So my information is up there for you to be able to reach out to me and make sure that we get those questions answered. So with that, Ed, thank you so much for diving into this exciting new module, and thank you everyone for participating today, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.